"K, what's the signal status?" Lieutenant Andrew Cole finally voiced the question on everyone's mind. Sergeant Ethan Kane, K, had been silently fiddling with a signal tracker he'd pulled from his backpack for the last couple of minutes. But judging by his expression, there was still nothing worth reporting. "Dead quiet, sir. The swarm's jamming us hard, and their generator isn't far. It's killing everything. With this level of interference, we'll only pick up the beacon from 500 meters out, if we're lucky." The dropship roared as its turbines spun up, lifting slowly from the ground. It drifted low over the hills to the east, heading for the sector under our control. According to plan, it was supposed to find a safe location and wait for our signal, or, failing that, rendezvous at a fallback point after 6 hours. That plan didn't last long. A bright flash and a thunderous boom echoed from just beyond the hills, no more than 300 meters away. It was clear. Our ride home had just been taken out. "Move out. Now." The lieutenant barked, springing to his feet and sprinting toward a narrow ravine between two sandy hills covered in scorched grass. Some of the hills gave way to dunes. Just beyond them, the open desert waited. Sergeant Ethan Kane, our deputy leader and tracker, took point and vanished ahead into the gorge. Private Anthony Graves, the second universal in our team, and I split right and left into flanking positions, moving along the ridgelines, careful not to expose ourselves. Only the scanner effectors peaked above the crests as we swept the terrain. So far, no contact, but tension clung to us like static. The enemy's presence was almost palpable. For the next half hour, we moved in formation, putting distance between ourselves and the crash site while cutting straight across the middle of the search zone. The immediate sense of danger began to fade, just enough for the lieutenant to signal a brief halt. "K, launch the dragonflies. We're blind out here. At this rate, we're going to stumble right into a swarm patrol." Kane pulled 3 small cylindrical pods from his pack. Pressing specific points on the casing, he activated each one and tossed them into the air. They unfurled mid-flight like miniature, transforming toys, revealing delicate wings. With a soft buzzing, the drones hovered into position above us. Kane directed them with his helmet. No external controls visible. The dragonflies split in 3 directions, straight ahead, and out at 45 degrees to either side. We resumed movement, but had barely gone far when Kane raised a hand. "Halt point." One of the drones had found something. The wreckage of a recon flycar, brought down by the swarm that we didn't approach. A trap was likely, Lieutenant Cole and Kane reviewed the drone footage. The scene was grim. For bodies, twisted and broken, lay near the smoldering remains of the vehicle. The recon team had gone out 8 strong, which meant at most 4 had survived. Assuming no one was still inside the wreckage or already dead elsewhere, but the beacon wasn't transmitting from the crash site. Otherwise, the drone would have caught it. That meant someone had gotten out. The only question now, where had they gone? The scanner embedded in my suit shrieked a high-pitched alarm. I had set different tones for each type of potential threat, and this one, sharp and urgent, I recognized instantly, even before the data appeared before my eyes. A small enemy recon drone had just locked onto us. A single burst from our autocannon echoed through the ravine like thunder, and fragments of the drone scattered across the sandy slopes. But there was no doubt now, we had been spotted. And the hunt was about to begin that we still hadn't even found the surviving scouts. "Anthony, fall back 100 meters down the ravine and stay there," the lieutenant ordered Graves, our second universal operator. "Draw them off to the northeast. Make your own way to the rendezvous point." "The drone that reached the crash site is lost," Schaeferson reported. "Where should I redirect the others, sir?" "Have them scan west. That's where we'll be heading." "Copy that." Redirecting. All those hours I spent tinkering with scanners and jamming systems back at the tech zone in the academy were finally paying off. Jeff, our technician, had helped me fine-tune things, too. The results came faster than I expected. "Lieutenant, I've got a beacon signal. Transmitting bearing now. K, can you confirm the cadets' report?" The lieutenant turned to our communications specialist. Negative for now, sir. My tracker's dead quiet. Change course. Ethan, adjust 15 degrees right. Copy. We climbed a little higher and advanced another 40 meters. Confirmed, Schaeferson said, a note of disbelief in his voice. Cadet, what kind of scanner do you have in that suit? Standard infantry model. Just tweaked it a little. And I've got a pretty good tech on my side. Your tech? What's his rank? Warrant officer. Was, anyway. He made lieutenant last week. They gave a warrant officer a lieutenant's bars. Without academy training. Enough chit-chat, the lieutenant snapped. Yes, sir. Kay and I responded in unison. It took us another 20 minutes to reach the beacon. Even then, we didn't find it right away. It was operating on short pulses with a drifting frequency, hard to catch unless you knew exactly what you were looking for. Even then, without a constant signal, it was like chasing a ghost. There were 2 scouts left alive, a sergeant and a corporal. The latter had suffered a serious injury in the crash, but thanks to his exosuit, he was still able to walk. All right, here's the deal. The lieutenant addressed the scouts. We found you, but that's the easy part. We've got no transport. Roy took out our dropship. Nearest extraction zone we can signal from, and where our people could safely reach us, is nearly 300 clicks through the dead zone. And Roy's been crawling all over this area lately. You guys stirred up a hornet's nest. Affirmative, sir. The sergeant, Kevin Nyland, he introduced himself, replied. We crossed into their control zone and found a deployment site for heavy mechs. Titans. Latest model. At least 2 battalions worth. Out here, in the middle of nowhere. Command on Proxima's going to love that news. Pretty much confirms. They're gearing up for a ground invasion. And here we were, naively expecting a space strike. We were spotted on exfil. Roy clearly didn't want that intel getting out. We managed to shake pursuit at first, but lost 2 men doing it. Reached the rendezvous with our flyer. And I guess you know the rest. Yes, we do. The lieutenant nodded thoughtfully. The others waited in silence for his decision. We're heading to the rendezvous point. Anthony should be there. The drone won't be coming back, but once they realize we haven't checked in, they'll send another one. If we're lucky, it'll catch our signal. And if it manages to make it back to base, they'll dispatch a recovery bot. Any questions? There were none. All right. Wounded in the middle of the column. Ethan, scout ahead. Briggs, Nyland, flank cover. John, watch. R6. K, call off one of the dragonflies. We need to conserve energy. No telling how long we'll be stuck out here. Let's move. Private Anthony Graves never made it to the rendezvous. Not on the first day. Not on the second. A drone did come. Circled overhead. Picked up our signal. Even confirmed reception. Then it vanished in a burst of flame. A direct hit from a Roy missile. And 5 minutes later, they came for us. Heavy infantry into the minor serpent. Well then, looked like it was my turn. With shrapnel whining past and the serpent's autocannon hammering the rocks, we fell back, slowly, firing from every bit of cover we could find. Cadet, are you ready? The lieutenant's voice betrayed a flicker of doubt. He'd already lost 1 universal ops specialist, but he'd trusted Graves, and Graves had completed the mission, even if it cost him his life. Me? The lieutenant barely knew a thing about me, but he didn't have much of a choice. Ready, sir. Which direction do I lead them? Hold them here first, then start circling them around the rendezvous point. Give us an hour's head start, then extract. We'll retreat east and try to reach friendly lines on foot. We'll activate the beacon for 10 minutes every 4 hours. Understood. I'm good to go. Good luck, cadet. And thanks for taking out that missile. That was clean work. Serving. The at ease, Briggs. Squad. Standard formation. Move out. And just like that, I was alone. Roy wasn't pushing too hard. Either they were waiting for reinforcements or just playing it safe, though they still had the upper hand, even before we split up. Now, it was my job to convince them I was the group. Honestly, with my loadout, it wasn't impossible. 3 different weapon systems gave me plenty of options to simulate scattered fire. I got to work, setting traps and alternating fire types. Then I activated the second ECM station embedded in my armor. Power drain was steep, but it made me damn near invisible to standard scanners. Everything I learned back on Protus 3 was about to pay off. I fired 3 rounds from my autocannon at the combat robot that had carelessly exposed itself in the open. I didn't manage to pierce its armor, but I certainly spoiled its mood and forced it to retreat behind a massive boulder. Time to change position and lie low for ABIT.my scanner picked up some suspicious movement near the top of the hill. I sent a burst from the rotary machine gun across the crest, not aiming to hit anything in particular, just making it clear that there was a shooter here with a different kind of firepower. Right after that, I pulled back and started scouting for a good sniping position. The rifle I was carrying, by the way, had an 18mm caliber, so really, the only one who could feel relatively safe from it was the pilot of the little serpent that a shrill alarm from the scanner told me. That Roy had launched a recon drone in my direction. Naturally, they wanted to know where the incoming fire was coming from. The drone was small and not particularly fast, trying to stay hidden among the folds of terrain, occasionally popping up from behind rocks and hilltops. For a sniper rifle, it was an ideal target, especially when the fire control system was doing the aiming, not a human. One shot, and the drone dropped like a stone, torn straight through, crashing into the ground in a heap of scrap. Still, it had spotted me before going down and transmitted my position. The serpent didn't hesitate to send a missile my way, a weapon typically meant for aerial targets, but deadly enough with manual guidance even against ground units. My light armor wasn't designed to take direct hits or to survive close proximity to heavy detonations. So I dove to the side, rolled, and leapt again to reach a large rock, just in time for it to soak up the rain of shrapnel. Another position, compromised. I was well aware that Roy's troops would soon grow tired of this little dance and try to flank the annoying shooters. But they weren't the only ones with drones. I had a deep appreciation for those little machines too. I'd taken a real liking to Captain Doyle's black cockroaches back on Protus 3, and I'd managed to beg 3 of them off him. These small arthropod-like bots, each no larger than a mouse, scrambled off toward the peaks of the nearest hills. While in line of sight, they communicated with my suit via laser optical channels, cutting through almost any interference. Thanks to them, I could now see what was going on behind the hills surrounding me. I did have one flying drone too, but only one, and I decided to keep it in reserve for now. What I saw on the far slopes turned out to be interesting. 2 of Roy's soldiers in heavy combat armor were moving carefully along the ridge of the nearest hill, trying to flank me from the right. Another pair was circling from the left. And up front, the combat robot kept darting out from cover, drawing my attention with occasional shots. The pilot of the little serpent wasn't worried about my cannon. At this range, all it could do was scratch the paint, maybe leave a dent or two. This wasn't some glossy executive flyer. For a real combat vehicle, those kinds of scars were marks of pride. I had to do something about that flanking maneuver, and fast. I fired off a few random rounds from the cannon, not to hit or even force them into cover, just to let them know I was still here. Then I shifted back and to the left. Quite a bit, actually, enough to get in the path of the enemy fire team trying to circle around me, but not so much that they'd spot me. I had no intention of killing them. That wasn't my mission. My goal was to slow them down. So that's what I was going to do. A round from my sniper rifle, at this caliber, could cause serious injury even through heavy infantry armor if it hit a limb. I took the shot, then immediately ducked out of sight. The outcome I monitored through the eyes of one of my little cockroach drones. The result was predictable. The uninjured soldier tried to drag his wounded teammate out of harm's way, nervously scanning the surroundings, expecting another shot from the invisible sniper at any moment. But the sniper stayed silent. I held my fire even when 2 more infantrymen showed up to help, accompanied by the little serpent itself, still bearing a few fresh scratches on its armor plating that I was much more interested in where they would take the wounded. After all, they had to have flown in on something. Using a specialized harness of some kind, Roy's troops quickly strapped the injured man to the back of the robot. Without wasting time, the machine took off across the hills with surprising speed. My ground drones couldn't track it beyond that, so I decided it was time to risk using the flyer. I instructed it to maintain the greatest distance possible while tailing the target, then gave the order to shadow the bot. With the robot gone, the enemy infantry made no move to attack. They went quiet. For now, I knew that wouldn't last. That bot couldn't be too far. They'd responded way too quickly to our drone arriving at the rendezvous point. That meant they were close that I used the lull to break contact and head toward the drone's designated rendezvous point. Roy's bot ended up about 15 minutes away, if you moved carefully and slowly. The enemy had lost me. Now they were clearly trying to figure out where I'd gone and where the rest of my group had disappeared to. I'd faithfully dragged them through the hills as ordered, but now the plan said I could rejoin the main group. Only I didn't plan to. Not yet. I understood perfectly well that pulling out now would just put us back into a deadlock. Our suit power cells were running low. There wasn't enough juice left for a 400-kilometer trek across the desert. And then what? Try to make it out on foot, unarmed, in nothing but flight suits? No way. I'd rather take a risk. I reached the bot while the enemy was still busy combing through the surrounding hills and ravines in search of the lost, hostile recon team. The robot had already rejoined their main force, leaving the wounded in the care of the pilot and another soldier, heavily armored, clearly assigned to guard the BOT. That moment, the pilot was busy adjusting the injured man's suit. The wounded soldier lay on the lowered ramp of the bot. The guard stood nearby, casually scanning the surroundings. Two sharp cracks from my sniper rifle echoed across the rolling plain. Both enemies dropped like limp marionettes. It was clean, fast, but I had no illusions. The alert about the attack on the bot had likely already reached Roy's main force. I hoped my jamming field had blocked the signal, but I couldn't be sure. I wasn't positioned between the bot and their main unit, after all, just off to the side. From anywhere else, I wouldn't have had a clear shot. I ran, not sparing a drop of power, pushing my gear to its absolute limits. Every second could count. I didn't bother finishing off the wounded soldier. Just shoved him off the ramp along with the pilot's body and dove into the dusky interior of the enemy bot. I almost tripped over another figure in a suit. Our suit. Human. Anthony Graves was slumped against the hull, completely unresponsive. A ragged gash tore through the chest plate of his armor. Looked like it came from a large piece of shrapnel. But he was alive. Unconscious, but alive. I didn't have time to assess his condition. I vaulted over him and made for the cockpit. After the operation on Protus 3, I'd had plenty of time during the flight back to Titan. Jeff and I found ways to put it to good use. After my painful experience inside one of Roy's painfully awkward technician suits, I decided anything not directly related to hacking enemy machines had to go. Armor, weapons, targeting systems, scanners, even the exoskeleton. We stripped it all. What was left was a compact core module that could be slotted neatly into the back of a human heavy infantry suit. Naturally, when packing for this mission, I made damn sure it was part of my loadout. Problem was, I'd never tried hacking any of Roy's aircraft before. All I had were the specs, and those only in theory. But after finding Anthony in that bot, I wasn't exactly spoiled for options. I powered up the rig. Thankfully, there were no surprises. The bot's security was far weaker than what protected Titans or even the little serpents. 8 minutes later, I had full control of the machine. There was just one issue. I'd never flown anything like it in my life, and no time for second thoughts. I threw myself into the chaos projected onto my visor by the enemy targeting and navigation suite. Our flight instructor would have murdered me for a takeoff like that. Brought me back to life with a steel-toed kick and murdered me again, on repeat, until I got the lesson. The bot bucked wildly as I wrestled with the controls. I nearly slammed into the nearest hill, just clipped it instead, kicking up a storm of dust. Still, I was airborne. Good thing nobody was shooting at me yet. In this state, I was the easiest target in the sky. At first, I just flew away to put some distance between myself and the hot zone. Once I figured out that I could more or less handle horizontal flight and basic maneuvering, I shifted my focus to the weapons systems. No thermobaric missile pods, those staples so dear to every ground trooper's heart. Instead, Roy had rigged this thing with a rapid-fire autocannon mounted under one stubby wing and an air-to-air missile launcher under the other, equipped with a manual laser optical targeting system. That, no doubt, was what had been taking shots at our planes and our bot. Judging by how many missiles had already been fired, the theory checked out. Roy knew we'd send a rescue team for the scouts. They got here ahead of time, picked a good spot, camouflaged the bot, fired up their ECM station, and waited. Textbook ambush. The Roy squad still roaming the hills no longer interested me. I remembered clearly that one of their little Serpent exosuits still had a missile left in its backpack launcher. And given my current flying skills, running into it sounded like a spectacularly bad idea. That I looped around the danger zone in a wide arc, hugging the terrain. Sometimes I even ducked the bot into wider ravines to stay low. By my calculations, I was already about 10 kilometers ahead of Lieutenant Yegorov's team. Flying straight to them in an enemy aircraft was too risky. They might just shoot me down before asking questions. I brought the twitchy machine down into a small hollow and headed back to the troop compartment. Crouching beside Anthony, I checked his status. Roy hadn't shut down his suit. Thank God. That was the only reason he was still alive. The onboard med system was doing what it could, but the prognosis was getting worse by the minute. If Graves didn't make it to a hospital within 5 hours, he wouldn't make it at all, which meant I couldn't waste time trying to land in one of our secure zones and wait for evac. There wasn't time. I'd have to take this stolen bird and fly it straight onto the Special Forces landing pad. They were gonna love that. I picked up the signal beacon 2 hours later. I'd run out of time to stall. With a long breath, I fired up the engines and lifted the bot into the air. The squad, already down 2 men, was making steady progress eastward, for now. The power cells in their combat suits still had about 5 hours of charge left. But Lieutenant Andrew Cole's mood was growing darker by the minute. He saw no real way out of the situation and kept moving forward on sheer stubbornness alone. Kay Shefferson raised a hand, signaling the team to halt. "Commander, I've picked up a drone. Human-made, but not my dragonfly, something else." Soon, the squad spotted the device. It approached slowly, buzzing faintly as it circled the group, then vanished behind the nearest ridge. "John, take a look," Lieutenant Andrew Cole ordered. The sniper climbed the ridge, raised his optical scanner over the crest, and immediately slid back down to the squad. "It's Roy's dropship, sir. Landed. Ramps down. And our cadets standing right next to it in that flying junkyard of his." Waved at me. "You haven't overheated, have you, John? Send me the file." Cole played the footage, staring at the projection on his visor for a few silent seconds. Then he clapped the sniper on the shoulder and started up the ridge, motioning for the others to follow. The wail of the air raid alarm yanked Major Weber from his desk. "Report, now," he barked into the comm. "Enemy dropship has entered our airspace." "Just 1. No escort." "Affirmative. Altitude 1 kilometer. Moving slow. Not maneuvering." "It's a perfect target." "Hold on, Lieutenant. Something's off." Roy was never the suicidal type. Could be a distraction or a decoy altogether. Put the battalion on full alert. AA systems to combat readiness. The bot can fire missiles from 10 clicks out. Distance 105. At this pace, it'll enter firing range in 15 minutes. Scramble interceptors. "Yes, sir." "Wait, Major. We're getting a signal from the bot. Weak, hard to make out, but the encryption is ours." "What the hell?" "Patch it through to me." The room filled with static, broken occasionally by garbled fragments of speech. But with each minute, the signal grew clearer. "Squad, Lieutenant Cole returning from mission. 1 injured. Requesting urgent medevac. Skies. No one fire." Weber shouted into the comm, Call off the interceptors. Get a medical team and recovery crew to the strip. Now, Major, did you send Cadet Nathan Briggs back to the academy? I did, Lieutenant. He got more than enough field experience in one operation. His field training's over, so the cadet's gone. Took the dropship with him too, as a legitimate trophy. I didn't object. Pity I didn't get the chance to talk to him. Since you've recommended me for promotion, I'd have gladly handed him my squad, without a second thought. Once he finishes training, of course. You're still a greenhorn, Lieutenant. Weber laughed out loud. You mean to tell me you never read his personnel file? Didn't have time at first, Cole admitted, and then it didn't seem necessary. It was obvious what kind of man he was. You should have checked it out just out of curiosity, the Major said between laughs. Do you even realize who you were offering your squad to? That cadet of yours commanded a heavy assault brigade on Roy-occupied Protus, 3 for a month. I bet the Academy is just holding him until the generals. Guys with stars so far above us, we'd need a shuttle to reach. Snap him up. Damn, Lieutenant, you've really made my day. I haven't laughed like this in years. The front hadn't exactly collapsed, but it had begun to creak badly. As it turned out later, this was the first ominous signal marking the beginning of a very hard time for humanity. Roy's diversionary strike on the Protus star system forced the Earth Federation to respond with urgency, committing a significant portion of its reserves to neutralize the threat. As a result, when a powerful and unexpected attack struck another front, on the Federation's worlds near Temp 112 and Bridge 14, there was almost nothing left to counter it. This led to a serious defense crisis that the Federation simply wasn't equipped to resolve quickly. That I returned to the Academy at a time when High Command was at its most tense and volatile. They were scraping together reserves from anywhere they could, and Lieutenant General Schiller had to grit his teeth and approve an early graduation for the third-year cadets. As is usually the case in such times, the cadets, though short only by half a year, were awarded just a single star on their shoulder boards and granted the rare rank of junior lieutenant. Instead of the usual full commission that I suddenly found myself without an instructor's role, my work with captured enemy tech had been intended for the Academy's graduating class, who were now shipped off to the front. The commandant called me to his office again. Waving off my attempt to report in, he silently gestured for me to take a seat at the conference table. Cadet Briggs, the general began grimly, his mood clearly hovering around zero. You're certainly a brave man and a hero. Colonel, Krebs forwarded me Major Weber's report on your field assignment. For that rescue operation, Weber has nominated you for the Iron Cross. That's the commendation we reserve for truly worthy soldiers. A shadow of a smile flickered across the general's somber face. Krebs has approved the nomination. Go ahead and make space on your uniform. Serving the Earth Federation, sir? Yeah, and serving well. But with the front the way it is, he paused, rubbing his temple. Tell me, Briggs, do you know the last time we had to throw half-trained cadets into battle? The early graduation order was clearly still bothering him. During the first year of the war with Roy, General. Exactly. 20 years ago. Do you understand what we've come back to? These are temporary setbacks caused by strategic miscalculation and intelligence failures. We will hold the line, sir. Drop the formalities, cadet. Yes, sir. You're right. Intel completely missed the preparations for the Temp and Bridge assaults. And I mean completely. And yes, we overcommit to the Protus system. Ironically, that mistake may have saved your life and the lives of your fellow first years. Not all of them. No, not all. This is war, cadet. You know it as well as I do. Maybe better. I haven't seen real combat in years. And that brings me to the second reason you're here. We've lost almost half of the first-year class and can no longer properly train the third. I wouldn't be surprised if the Academy shortens the program to 2 years. Right now, your first-year class is better prepared for combat than the second, and possibly even better than the fresh one-star lieutenants who used to be third years. I need practical insights from your combat experience. I have to shape the remaining cadets into officers who won't die with their units in their very first battle. He leaned in and locked eyes with me. Don't look at me like that. Yes, a general is asking a cadet to share battlefield experience. Have you looked in the mirror lately, Briggs? Seen that qualification patch on your shoulder? I'll say this much, if it weren't for the 6 months we spent at the academy, none of us would have come back from Protus 3. When our ship took a series of direct hits and started drifting uncontrollably toward the planet, the cadets stayed a cohesive fighting unit, even after the officers were killed. Platoon leaders maintained control of their troops, and thanks to that, the landing was carried out with minimal casualties. You trained us well, sir. Lieutenant General Schiller said nothing. He watched Nathan in silence, his expression unreadable. What we really lacked was heavy weaponry and experience in guerrilla tactics and sabotage operations, Nathan continued. If it hadn't been for Captain Doyle's team, I honestly don't know how we would have made it. And I'm afraid that in the current situation, planetary assault forces will keep finding themselves in similar scenarios, completely surrounded and cut off from the main force. We need training in that area and proper reconnaissance gear. I was planning to report this through the chain of command, but since you called me in, I'd like to use the opportunity to bring it up directly. Recon teams are usually attached to assault units during deployment if High Command deems it necessary, Schiller said. Your case was special. No one was planning to send you into combat, so you had to improvise. I'm not yet convinced we need a dedicated recon platoon in every battalion. You told us yourself, sir, reconnaissance and assault are two very different specializations. I saw that firsthand with Captain Doyle's men. They're excellent scouts, but they're not frontline fighters. You can't send them into a direct assault. They're not trained or equipped for it. On Protus 3, what I desperately needed were soldiers who could fight in formation and then switch to guerrilla tactics when necessary. In assault operations, everyone has to fight. That's a principle that dates back to pre-space warfare. Fair point, Schiller muttered after a pause. Draft the report, cadet. I'll review it, and maybe we'll move forward with it. He shifted in his chair, a different expression now flickering across his face. Now, I have some news for you. Yesterday, during the Academy's Board of Trustees meeting, your name came up. General of the Army Vasnetsov joked that we've got cadets with enough combat experience to apply directly to the General Staff Academy. Got a laugh, sure, but afterward, I looked through your file. And you know what? You're a legitimate candidate. Nathan blinked, unsure whether to respond. You've got the neural accelerator. You've held enough leadership roles in live combat. The only thing you lack is a formal military degree, and the Academy only accepts officers. You're 23 now. Oddly enough, I keep feeling like I'm talking to a peer, but the paperwork doesn't care about that. You've done enough for this academy that I, as its commander, want to have a say in your future, he said, smiling faintly. But the only person in the Earth Federation who can authorize an officer commission bypassing the age and rank requirements is the president. I spoke to Vasnetsov. He's ready to submit a request to the president to have you commissioned as a second lieutenant. I'll sign it too. We'll need 3 more senior officers who know you personally and are willing to vouch for you. Got any ideas? General Garrett Wolfe, Admiral Nelson, Admiral Fulton, I listed without hesitation. I haven't met Admiral Nelson personally, but he commanded the liberation of Protus 3. I believe General Garrett Wolfe can persuade him to sign this document. You haven't been wasting your time, I see. The general smirked. Fulton and Wolfe can't stand each other, to such a degree that even fleets outside the 5th Assault know about it. If you manage to get both their signatures on the same piece of paper, well, enough poetry. Let's start with Kane. We repelled the Roy assault at the cost of losing the Temp 112 system and nearly the entire infrastructure on Bridge 14, but we managed to halt their advance. The cadets who had been deployed early were recalled to finish their training. Just over a quarter of those who had left the Planetary Assault Academy 40 days ago made it back. For the next 4 months, I worked like a machine. The Academy Commander gave me a study schedule designed to hammer 2.5 years worth of specialized training into my miserable brain and spinal motor centers. I managed, but every evening I collapsed into bed like a sack of potatoes and passed out until morning. Then came the summons to the capital. I was flying back to Earth to be awarded the gold star that I didn't like the situation on the front lines at all. When I first got here, the balance of power between the factions seemed stable, and I figured I had at least 5 years to build my career, form connections, and gather the means to act. Now, I saw clearly that if we didn't start doing something right now, the Earth Federation could very well lose this war. It was time to build a team. This wasn't something I could do alone. Just like on my first day in this world, I sat down to tally assets and liabilities that I needed knowledge. But not the kind you get from books. I needed the kind that would keep me alive on the battlefield, and maybe even win this war faster. Next, resources. That meant money, first and foremost. Right now, my personal account held just over 32 million federal credits. Patent royalties, instructor pay, bonuses from captured enemy tech, and award stipends from the Iron Cross and the Gold Star. It looked like a lot. In the capital, a regular citizen could live off that for almost 10 years without worry. But I wasn't regular. I was restless, always moving, always building. This was barely enough to get started. So yes, the resource question would need addressing soon, but not immediately. Second on the list, people thought I still had to build my military career, and I wasn't even a commissioned officer yet. That meant I couldn't run things personally. Someone else would have to handle the operations of the business I was planning to create. I'd help, of course, but I might not have the time or opportunity to lead it myself that I thought for a moment, and immediately remembered Lieutenant Jeff, my senior technician. He should be one of the first I talked to. Then there was Professor Stein from Lunar Colonial Tech. His name and connections would be invaluable. And Inga. I definitely needed a trusted person to oversee the company. Truthfully, I wished she'd leave the military altogether. But knowing her, I didn't even dare bring it up why ET.so. The general outline of my plan had come together. First, an arms development company. That would let me solve two problems at once. I'd gradually integrate my own designs into production, introducing them into new weapons models. And, of course, there was the money. Research would swallow resources by the ton, and there was no way the Federation Treasury would ever fund it. But this way, I could channel the company's profits directly into development. Second, just as important as the first, my military career, capital of the Earth Federation. The vast city of Richmond that in the mid-21st century, humanity finally succeeded in ruining its own planet to the point of irreversible ecological collapse. Garbage islands choked the oceans, man-made disasters plagued oil platforms and chemical plants. Carbon dioxide poisoned ocean waters, dust and toxins filled the air. Combine that with a surging global population, and it's a miracle we survived long enough to invent terraforming. And the first planet humanity had to terraform was Earth itself. They suspended an artificial thermonuclear sun over the South Pole, melting the ice and giving a parched, gasping humanity a source of fresh water and the oxygen extracted from it. It was meant to be a temporary solution, but it gave us the time we needed. Massive environmental cleansing stations, placed along air currents and ocean flows, gradually lowered the concentration of toxins in the atmosphere and seas to safe levels. Humanity never repeated such a mistake again. Environmental protection on Earth became a kind of holy crusade that it's no wonder that the ice-free southern continent transformed into a paradise of forests and lakes. In its heart, grateful nations built a city that was a model of ecological design, a shining capital for the entire Federation. Spring had come to the southern hemisphere, and the Antarctic sun was faithfully simulating the gentle season. With 2 days left before the award ceremony, I decided to take advantage of my time in the capital and handle some preliminary business for my future company that I knew only slightly more than nothing about local legal procedures, so I reached out to a small consulting firm I'd found online. The text on their site had seemed sensible enough. Good afternoon, young man. I'm Lev Rabinowitz, senior legal advisor at TBC Consulting, greeted the energetic man in his 30s who answered my call. How can our company assist you today? Nathan Briggs, I replied. I need to register a company that will eventually be eligible for government procurement contracts. And the line of business? Weapons and military equipment development and supply. Rabinowitz's eyebrows flicked up for just a moment, but his voice remained calm and professional. That industry requires a government license. The list of requirements is quite extensive: a production facility, qualified personnel, and there are also minimum capital thresholds for incorporation. That's exactly why I'm seeking legal guidance. Tell me, Nathan, are you planning to be the founder and legal owner of the company? No, my mother will own it. And how much do you intend to contribute to the company's authorized capital? $30 million. Rabinowitz didn't even blink. It wasn't his business where a 23-year-old got that kind of money. Maybe the kid was the son of some industrial magnate. Maybe it was an inheritance. What did it matter? Well, that should be enough, at least to meet the legal requirements. I can take your case, but to obtain a license for that kind of business, I'll need several documents from you. Proof that you have experience developing weapons, results from testing your designs, and recommendations from high-ranking military officers. Can you provide those? The lawyer's eyes betrayed some doubt. I believe so, but it will take some time. In that case, here's what I suggest. I'll register the company for you first. That will be the initial stage of our collaboration. Relatively inexpensive. Then, as you gather the necessary documents, we'll begin the licensing process. That's where you'll need to get your wallet ready, Nathan. It's not going to cost you less than $500,000. The awards ceremony was staged with considerable pomp. All 35 recipients were assembled in the Grand Column Hall. The ceremony was broadcast across the entire Federation. In addition to the president, many top officials and high-ranking officers were in attendance. I was practically salivating, looking over that bouquet of potential contacts. But my junior rank kept me separated from them like a wall of tank armor. President of the Earth Federation, Marshal David Tomlinson, was an imposing man in his 60s. He had a thick mane of silver hair, a slightly hooked nose, a firm jawline, and piercing hazel eyes. He gave the standard ceremonial speech, tailored to reflect the current, less-than-ideal state of the front lines. Phrases like, "in these difficult times," "a period of harsh trials," and "a test of our will to win," appeared frequently in his address. Then came the awards themselves. A tall, polished general, the very image of a desk officer, read out each name. One by one, the honorees marched forward with parade ground precision and reported to the president. Tomlinson would usually offer a polite smile, take the appropriate decoration from a stern-looking aide holding a velvet tray, present it to the recipient, and shake their hand with a few words of congratulation. The honoree would respond with the regulation reply and return to the formation. Occasionally, the president would quietly say a few words to a soldier or officer and even hear a brief answer. What they said was impossible to make out. My turn came near the end. Mr. Commander-in-Chief, Cadet Nathan Briggs of the Planetary Assault Academy reporting to receive a state decoration. I announced clearly. Protus 3, command of a heavy assault brigade and the strike toward our landing zone. Tomlinson asked unexpectedly. The polished general flinched in surprise at the question. Yes, sir, Commander-in-Chief. Congratulations on being awarded the Gold Star, Second Lieutenant, and on your admission to the General Staff Academy. We need commanders like you now more than ever. At your service, sir. I replied by the book and snapped to attention. Specialist in the swarm. The president asked quietly, nodding toward the insignia on my jacket, sending the ceremonial general into full protocol shock. Any requests or proposals? I had to fight to keep my expression composed. But miss a chance like this? Not a chance. Yes, sir, I do. Wait for my aide after the ceremony. You're dismissed for now, Lieutenant. A miracle didn't happen. I didn't get a personal meeting with the president. But his aide did find me afterward, and, while doing his best to mask the disdain of dealing with a junior officer barely out of cadet boots, asked me to put my requests and suggestions in writing and send them to him for review and delivery to the commander-in-chief. The door to the president's office opened softly, and a perfectly groomed assistant brought in coffee and ginger cookies. Marshal David Tomlinson nodded in silence. "Mr. President, you asked me to remind you about Second Lieutenant Briggs." "Ah, Briggs. Right. Thanks." Tomlinson sighed and rubbed his face. "What's the situation?" "Just the short version. He claims that during operations on Protus, 3, and Proxima, he deployed weapon systems of his own design, created using the Academy's repair facilities and field resources, including captured alien components. According to him, these systems performed significantly better in combat than our standard-issue equipment. Did you verify that?" "Yes, sir. I contacted the commanders he served under. The responses were entirely positive. In the case of Protus 3, there's even a specific combat efficiency calculation, 130%. Let's assume that's accurate. What does he want? Funding for R&D? A transfer to the defense sector? Surprisingly, no. He's not asking for money, and he sees himself only in frontline combat units. What he wants is a license to develop military technology through a company he just registered and unrestricted access to Ministry of Defense procurement competitions. And what's the holdup with the license? According to current mod practices, licenses like that are issued only to large enterprises within the defense industrial complex or their subsidiaries. A newly formed private firm simply won't be granted one, no matter how qualified it may be. Technically, yes, it could qualify, but there are enough bureaucratic requirements that something can always be used as an excuse to reject the application. Let's not get in his way. This guy might prove useful. Some folks in the defense industry have gotten too comfortable, and if this kid isn't just full of hot air, which I doubt he is, he could be the perfect thorn in a very well-padded backside. What do you need from me? A signed recommendation from you for the license would instantly cut through all the red tape. Is the draft ready? Yes, Mr. President. Send it over. I'll sign it. And keep me informed if he produces anything worthwhile. Lev Rabinovich stared blankly at his tablet, his eyes frozen on the screen. I couldn't blame him. I'd done the same thing yesterday, mindlessly rereading the presidential recommendation, authorizing a weapons development license for Briggs Armament Technologies, personally signed by President Tomlinson. Eventually, the attorney looked up at me, still slightly dazed. "I think you'll have the license in a week, Nathan. With that kind of endorsement, no one's going to bother with the formalities. The president's taken full responsibility. That's no small thing. You've earned a great deal of trust." I gave a noncommittal grunt. I hadn't expected this. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a tiny warning bell was going off, reminding me that there's no such thing as free cheese in a maze built for rats. "A week is more than fine," I said. "But I'll need somewhere to start operations. Can your company help me secure an office and a small site for prototyping?" "I believe so. That won't be a problem. Getting an office in the capital is easy if you have the funds. As for a production site, well, Earth is a no-go. No way they'll allow weapons manufacturing planet-side, but the moon? That's all yours. There are massive tech parks there, and I'm sure they'd be happy to lease you space. Maybe even with equipment." "Perfect. Lev, I'm sending you a list of requirements for both the office and the production site. I'll be waiting on your proposals." "Good afternoon, Dr. Stein." I decided not to delay the call. "Do you have a few minutes for me?" "Nathan, always a pleasure to see you." Professor Ivan Stein smiled warmly. Of course he did. His memories of working with me were exclusively positive, both emotionally and financially. But you wouldn't be calling a washed-up provincial professor just to chat. Let me guess, you've got another wild plan in the works. Am I right? "As always, Professor." "As always," I admitted. "And I'm just as glad to see you. In a good mood." "Well then, let's not drag it out. Tell me what you've got." "I've registered a company. I'm about to start developing weapons systems for the military. In a week I'll have the license, the office, and a production site ready. What I need now are people, a team of good engineers and scientists, to work on EW systems, armor, and weaponry. Then we'll move on to prototyping exosuits, drones, and combat bots. 10 people to start. I'll send you a detailed list of required skills and fields. Would you be able to find candidates from the Lunar Colonial Tech University, maybe some top students or recent grads? I'm looking for young, unorthodox minds capable of recognizing and developing breakthrough ideas. Send the list over. I'll see what I can do. I sent the professor the document I had prepared in advance. A couple of minutes later, Stein finished reading, lifted his eyes from the screen, and looked at me. I think I can find them, he said. I see you've already included estimated salary ranges. I doubt any of my top candidates would say no to that. Give me a few days to speak with the right people. Thank you, Professor. I never doubted you'd be able to help me build the team. But that's not all, I added, watching his face shift from mild surprise to genuine curiosity. I also need someone to lead this team, someone with the right knowledge, experience, and academic authority. And you want me to help? You find such a person? No, Professor Stein. I've already found him. That person is you. If you're willing, of course. But something tells me you won't say no. I gave him a sharp, confident smile. The professor fell silent, clearly taken aback. Humph, Stein muttered, noncommittal. I did guess this was another one of your escapades. Anyone else, I'd have shown the door on the spot. I've grown too attached to colonial tech. I've put down roots here. Professor, I said quietly, do you still watch the news regularly? From time to time. And what do you see there? Do you really think I'd be doing all this if everything were fine? Why would I? I'm not exactly poor. And as you've seen, I became a soldier, not a scientist. So why would I come back with this kind of proposal? Think about it. He said nothing. Just watch me silently. You first taught me in my freshman year. I continued. And now, here I am again, returning to science and engineering. But it's not about me. We're losing this war. And unless we make a breakthrough, now we're finished. I'm asking you to help me gather brilliant young minds and try to change the course of this fight. Because if we don't build better weapons now, we're all going to die. Some will die in space or in the colonies, fighting the swarm. Others will die right here in the solar system, under bombs and orbital strikes, when there's no one left to defend our worlds. There'll be no more colonial tech. The artificial sun over Titan will go dark. I paused, my voice steady. We need a cure, Professor. And that cure is new weaponry, with or without you. But I'd rather do it with you. It's really that bad? I was there, I said. I saw it with my own eyes. Stein looked away, lost in thought. He was silent for a long moment. Then finally, he turned back and met my gaze. Where and when do you want me to bring the engineering team? I spoke with the newly minted engineering lieutenant, Jeff, almost immediately after my call with the professor. He took my proposal calmly, but his response still caught me off guard. Commander, of course I'm in. No question about it, Jeff said without hesitation. In just a few months working with you, I've seen more cutting-edge tech than I had in my entire career before that. And not just seen, I've had the chance to dig into it, really understand it, and even test it in combat. This isn't just service, it's a dream job. And something tells me your new company won't be short on that kind of equipment either. He paused, then added, just one thing. Talk to the head of the academy, will you? I owe him a lot. Without his support, I'd never have made lieutenant. Basically, I went through a personalized training course at the military academy. Though, come to think of it, I am talking to my instructor right now, he said with a grin. And truth be told, I'm not ready to leave the army yet. I just got my commission. Understood, Jeff. I'll speak to the lieutenant general. I replied. I'm sure we can find a solution that works for everyone. Once that's settled, I'll come back to you. Lieutenant General Schiller had given me his direct contact when he sent me to the capital for the awards ceremony. So now I could reach out to him personally. The head of the academy didn't answer right away, but 20 minutes later he called me back. Well, Junior Lieutenant, he said with a wry tone. Congratulations on the Federation's highest honor, your new rank, and your acceptance into the General Staff Academy. No need for formalities. This isn't an official call. And drop the rank, would you? Thank you, sir. I couldn't have done any of it without your help. I watched the award ceremony. What the hell were you talking about with the president for a whole minute? General Gallo nearly burst a blood vessel from that protocol breach. Schiller chuckled. That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about, I replied. Take a look at this document. I forwarded him a scanned copy of the presidential recommendations signed by President Tomlinson. How the hell do you get your hands on things like this? Schiller said after a moment, amusement clear in his voice. First Admiral Grant, now the president himself. You've got a gift for being in the right place at the right time with the right words. So what do you want from me this time? I need a chief engineer, a talented tech with deep knowledge of weapons systems. And you've got just the guy. I'm not giving you Jeff, Schiller replied instantly. Everything you've done so far has benefited the Academy. And now you want to poach my best. Tech, I don't want to take him. And honestly, he wouldn't leave the service. Not from you. Then what are you asking? I'm proposing a mutually beneficial collaboration with the Planetary Assault Military Academy, I said. You can officially assign Lieutenant Jeff to my company as a military advisor, or even just a consultant, under my formal request. His role would be to facilitate direct communication between military developers and frontline units, to make sure our designs meet real combat needs. I leaned forward slightly as I spoke. You need a brilliant technician. So do I. Under my supervision, his skills will only grow, and the Academy will gain early access to next-gen military prototypes, some of which are already being tested. In combat, Jeff would still spend part of his time with you, carrying out his duties, just in a slightly reduced capacity. On May 15th, I, Nathan Briggs, turned 24. Inga had been shipped off, along with the entire first-year class, to some godforsaken wilderness for another round of field training, so I didn't get to see her. I ended up celebrating at home with my mom. I was already planning to move her to Earth, so it was a good chance to combine business with a bit of personal time. She was a little stunned to find herself the sole owner of Briggs Armaments, but only slightly stunned. She'd gotten used to her son's odd ways by now. So what am I supposed to do in the capital, Nathan? She asked after staring at me long enough and running through the usual post-reunion questions. Here I teach kids, and I like my job. I've got a great team, a familiar, comfortable routine. What would I even do out there? You'd be in the last place the swarm will reach if we fail to stop them. The Federation will defend the capital to the bitter end, with everything it's got. You say terrible things. I know, Mom. I've seen these terrible things up close. They don't release all the details to the public, don't want to start a panic in the colonies. But the truth is, a swarm breach could happen anywhere. As for your job, there are kids in the capital too. Plenty of schools. You said yourself once that I should move to Earth. I just wanted to stop you from becoming a professional soldier, she said softly. And I would have followed you anywhere if that had worked. I was so afraid of losing you. And now I'm afraid of losing you. I can't focus on anything, knowing you're in danger. She gave me a sad smile. All right, she said. When do we leave? I finished reading the document, fruit of a brilliant collaboration between Leo Rabinowitz, Jeff, and Professor Stein. The title began with expenditure plan, and the whole thing looked rather neat and polished. Rabinowitz had a real knack for this kind of thing, but the total at the bottom made every hair on my body stand on end point $820 million that I could barely wrap my head around that number. It was more of a concept than an amount. The worst part was, even being as critical as possible, I could only find a way to reduce costs by maybe 10%, and that mostly by postponing some purchases until later, when we might actually have revenue to offset them. Gentlemen, I looked up from the table. The plan is excellent, but we've only got 30 million rubles on hand. We can't even pay equipment suppliers in advance, let alone cover everything else. We could try leasing the equipment, Rabinowitz suggested. It'll increase the overall cost by about 10%, but it could cut the upfront investment in half, though that depends heavily on the company's reputation and its owners, too. How's yours, Nathan? Non-existent, I'm afraid. Although, would a presidential endorsement letter help? Hard to say. Worth a shot, though. That document does carry weight. But you'll also need a full business plan, projected cash flow, production timeline, repayment sources, and all the usual stuff. Backgrounds and work experience of company executives, too. Even if we pull that off, I said, we still need to find another 400 million somewhere. Then we'll have to bring in an outside investor, said Lev reluctantly. But if they put up the money, they'll want equity. And once someone else owns a piece of the company, they'll want a say in how it's run. No, we'll try to avoid any co-owners, I said firmly. That only leads to governance issues. And the last thing I need right now is shareholder conflict. Get the paperwork ready. Leviticus, tomorrow we try our luck with the federal bank. They finance half the defense sector anyway, so our field should be close to their heart. Plus, they've got their own leasing company. Good afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Robert. I'm a new client manager at the bank. How can I help you today? A short, exceptionally thin young man greeted us from the screen of my tablet. Clearly a low-level clerk, just a filter meant to keep unqualified applicants away from the real decision-makers. Good afternoon, said Rabinovich on our behalf, then introduced us. We represent the Briggs Arms Company. We specialize in the development and production of weapons and military equipment. I haven't heard of your company before. How long have you been in this business? We've only just received our government license for this line of work. And what services do you need from our bank? Equipment leasing and a credit line for operational expenses. And, of course, a corporate account with your institution. All right, please forward your documentation package. The clerk reviewed the files in silence for about 10 minutes while we waited patiently. Well, he finally said, here's what I see. You're a new company, haven't launched operations yet, and have no proven track record in the field. That's a major red flag. You've got only 4% equity compared to the credit and leasing amounts you're requesting. Another negative. Your proposed repayment sources aren't what I'd call reliable. If you had signed contracts with the Ministry of Defense already, it would be a different story. As it stands, you might not even win the bid. That's the bad news. Now for the positives. Your license is quite serious, which means government regulators see your company as viable and capable in your chosen domain. You also have positive results from field testing some of your prototypes. Although the documentation isn't in standard format, it's still something. And lastly, you've got a respected scientist and a team of qualified engineers and researchers on staff. So, the picture is mixed, to say the least. I'm afraid we can't approve the full amounts you're requesting. Are there any additional factors that could influence the bank's decision? I stepped in, certainly. For example, if you have a credible guarantor or a high-quality collateral asset that covers the loan value with a margin. Would intellectual property rights qualify as collateral? Depends. We'd need to assess recent royalty income, among other factors. What are you offering? A patent on electronic warfare systems. I've just sent the file. The manager reviewed the document in silence, then spoke thoughtfully. Not bad. It'll need a proper valuation, of course, but I'd say it's worth about 200 million, if sold outright. And your company holds 100% of the rights. So, under that collateral, you could probably secure a loan for 30 million. But as you can see, that doesn't really change the overall picture. Do you have anything else? Shares of our company. Given the license we hold, do they have any value as collateral? Unfortunately, no. That's considered a non-liquid asset. Your shares aren't publicly traded, so I doubt the bank would be interested. Tell me, Robert, Rabinovich said, playing our last card. Did you actually read the documents related to our license carefully? Well, I skimmed through them. Everything seems in order. Then please take a closer look at the signature on the licensing recommendation. The manager opened the file again and read more attentively. This time, he looked up at us almost immediately. That's very unusual, gentlemen, he said, uncertainty creeping into his voice. According to the bank's internal regulations, the identity of the person signing this document isn't considered a determining factor. But clearly, your case doesn't fall within normal parameters. I'll have to escalate your application to the director of our branch. He'll be in touch shortly. The director of the federal bank's capital branch couldn't make the decision on his own either. He contacted us and informed us that he'd submitted our documents to the board of directors for review. They dragged it out for 3 days before issuing a definitive rejection. Not only did they refuse us the requested sum, they denied us service altogether. The branch director, when he delivered the news, sounded genuinely puzzled and a little shaken. Either he was a superb actor, or he honestly didn't know what had just happened. In my mind, another alarm bell went off. That nagging worm-off. Doubts started pounding harder than ever. We were rejected by 5 more major banks. 2 of them flatly refused to do any business with us at all. The others were more polite. They were willing to open accounts, and one even promised to consider a 10 million credit application. The manager there insisted we had a decent chance of approval. But of course, none of it would solve our real problem. On the 3rd day, everything became clear. I received a call from Lev Rabinovich. He sounded uneasy and genuinely distressed. "Nathan, I have bad news," he said bluntly. "I've been contacted by people from Global Vipon Industries. They hinted, quite clearly, that they'd like to negotiate the purchase of the Briggs Arms Company. I really enjoy working with you, but I want to be honest, if you decide not to sell, I'll have to cut our business ties. Going against people like that would destroy everything I've built. They're not the kind of enemies I want." "Thank you for your honesty, Lev," I replied thoughtfully, trying to chart my course through this new situation. "I'm not going to turn down a conversation. Let's see what they have to offer. Will you still help us through this stage?" "As long as no final decision has been made, yes." "Then please arrange a meeting." The representatives of one of the largest weapons manufacturers in the world declined to come to our office, nor did they invite us to theirs. Instead, we met on neutral ground, in a private meeting room at one of the most expensive business centers in the capital. "Well then, gentlemen," I said, taking the lead after we'd introduced ourselves, "you've asked to meet with me. I'm listening." "Nathan," began Enrique Cruz, the first negotiator from the Weapons Corporation, speaking softly, "it's a pleasure to meet you. Such a young officer, already a recipient of the Golden Star and the Iron Cross. You're clearly an exceptional soldier, and it's obvious this is your true calling." "Thank you, Mr. Cruz," I nodded politely, "but I believe that's not the reason we're meeting today." "No rush, Mr. Briggs. I'm just getting to the point." He smiled thinly. "You are a model officer with combat experience far beyond what anyone would expect at your age and rank. A brilliant military career lies ahead of you. You're already enrolled at the General Staff Academy, and graduating from there opens countless doors. My colleague Mr. Martinez and I are trying to understand, why are you suddenly changing course so drastically, diving into a business you clearly know little about?" "Gentlemen," I replied, feigning surprise, "isn't it perfectly logical? I've taken part in 2 major combat operations, and in both cases I achieved high battlefield efficiency by upgrading the standard-issue weapons used by the Federation forces. If that's not a reason for optimism when founding an arms company, then I don't know what is." "Optimism? Not quite," Cruz said, his tone sharpening. "I don't think you fully understand what you're getting into, or whom you're challenging. Developing weapons and military equipment requires massive resources, both financial and human. This industry has long been carved up by the major players. We, at Global Vipon Industries, control around 40% of the arms market. There are 3 other large corporations holding smaller shares. That's it, Mr. Briggs. No one else. Yes, small firms exist, but they never work directly with the Ministry of Defense. They act as subcontractors for one of the major companies, usually subsidiaries or dependent branches of the same big players. You, however, received a full license for weapons development and manufacturing, completely bypassing the usual protocols. That puts you far outside the established system. And no one wants a new player on the field who has direct access to defense contracts." "Well, thank you for the lecture on the arms industry, Mr. Cruz," I said with a smile. "So what exactly does GVI want from me?" "We'd like to buy your company," Cruz said plainly. "Including the license, of course. That's where the real value lies. Our board is ready to offer 100 million. It's a generous offer, Mr. Briggs. Think it over. In addition, we're willing to purchase all your existing developments related to weapon upgrades, and we'll offer to buy any future innovations or new designs you manage to create." Cruz fell silent, and all 3 of them, including Rabinowitz, turned to me, clearly expecting an answer. Judging by the look on my consultant's face, he thought GVI's offer was more than generous. It's a solid offer, gentlemen, I said. And if I were just another businessman, I'd have taken it without a second thought. Then what's stopping you, Mr. Briggs? Only one thing. I didn't start this company for profit. I already have enough money to live comfortably, though, admittedly, not for long. I don't expect you to fully understand, gentlemen. I can already see that. But I ask you to try, at least well enough to explain my motives to those who sent you here today. I've only just returned from combat, and I've seen the reality of the front lines firsthand. I've worked alongside high-ranking field commanders. With the weapons and resources we currently have, we're not only incapable of defeating the swarm, we're going to lose this war. It's only a matter of time. What good will your promised money do me then? Who will even be around to spend it? I think you're exaggerating, Mr. Briggs. Martinez interjected, though my words had clearly unsettled him. That sounds rather defeatist. Do I strike you as someone prone to defeatism? I asked quietly, cutting him off. You must have done your homework. You've read my file. My colleague misspoke, Enrique Cruz said quickly, trying to smooth over the tension. He meant to say he takes a more optimistic view of the situation. Please, go on. So here it is, gentlemen. I founded the Briggs Arms Company because I believe I can make a real difference. I've assembled a talented team of like-minded professionals, people who know what they're doing. I already have several promising designs, based directly on my combat experience against the swarm. I'm convinced these systems are critical and need to be deployed across the Federation forces as soon as possible. That's what I intend to present to the Ministry of Defense's Weapons Commission. Let me be clear one more time. I don't care about profit. Everything this company earns will go straight into R&D. And to get those developments into the field without delay, I need direct access to the ministry. I will pursue only what I believe is essential for our military, without outside interference, and without anyone telling me what's commercially viable and what's not. Martinez looked visibly frustrated, though he tried hard to mask it. The direction the conversation had taken clearly didn't suit him. Cruz, on the other hand, seemed lost in thought. At last, he exhaled deeply and looked me in the eye. I respect your position, Nathan, Cruz said, and I thought I heard a note of regret in his voice, though perhaps I imagined it. But the reality is, you won't be able to run this business on your own. You've already been denied credit and leasing agreements, haven't you? You're a smart man. I'm sure you figured out that wasn't a coincidence. And believe me, it's only going to get worse from here. With all due respect, sincere respect, for what you've accomplished, the arms industry is simply out of your league. I regret that we find ourselves on opposite sides of this table, but that's just how life works sometimes. Still, I urge you to reconsider our offer. I could double the amount we're offering, but I understand this isn't about money for you. So here's another path. Shut the business down and bring your team over to us. I think I could persuade leadership to form a dedicated unit around your people. You'd have virtually unlimited resources and the safety of working inside a major corporation. Thank you, Enrique. I replied, calling him by his first name deliberately. I understand you're just doing your job. Your employer gave you a clear directive by my company, but I can't help you. I need full autonomy in decision-making, total independence, and that's simply impossible within the vertically integrated structure of your corporation. So I'm afraid I have to decline. That's your final decision, Mr. Briggs? Martinez asked, his voice edged with barely restrained irritation. It is, Mr. Martinez. Well then, he hissed, I suspect you'll come to regret this, Lieutenant. Because when the ministry's commission shows up in 3 months and finds there's been no real development activity, your license will be revoked, and your noble intentions will amount to nothing. Without funding, you've got nothing. You can walk into every bank in the Federation, they won't touch you. At best, they'll make vague promises and drag their feet for months. And if you go looking for an outside investor, well, I think you know exactly who'll be pulling the strings behind them. Unfortunately, my colleague is right, Mr. Briggs, Cruz said gently. You have my contact information. I'll be waiting for your call. Our offer still stands, for now anyway. But as long as you hold that license, the price will drop by 2 million credits for each day you delay. It was a pleasure meeting you. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have other appointments. Not all partners are equally valuable. And I'd just lost Rabinowitz, though I'd had certain plans for him. I'm sorry, Nathan, but in your position, I would have taken that deal. he said quietly as soon as the negotiators had left. "It's been a pleasure working with you, but I'm afraid you'll have to find another consultant." I didn't regret it. Better to cut ties with an unreliable partner early on than take a knife in the back when the stakes are higher. Besides, I had more pressing problems than Rabinowitz that I returned to the office, locked myself in my private room, picked up my tablet, and started analyzing the situation. My original plan had been ambitious. I wanted to design a new generation of electronic warfare (EW) stations. Drawing from my battlefield experience and the prototypes I'd field-tested during combat, I believed I could significantly improve not only the circuitry used in EW systems, but also the very component base those systems were built upon. That, of course, required expensive equipment I could now forget about. Still, that didn't mean my plans were completely derailed. The Federation's existing technology could still be pushed far beyond its current limits with the software algorithms I had in mind. Fine. If that's what we had to work with, then we'd optimize the communication and countermeasure systems using whatever resources were available. I dove into manufacturer catalogs, estimating what components we could realistically acquire and how much they would cost. In 3 months, I'd have to present a report and, ideally, a working prototype to the Ministry of Defense. The more we could show by then, the better. After about 40 minutes of digging, I realized I was completely bogged down. I called Jeff in. Another hour passed with us struggling through configurations and estimates, and I finally had to bring in Professor Stein. By the time he arrived, our brainstorming had grown into a full-blown meeting with the entire team. "All right, everyone," I said, summing up the situation. "Given recent developments, we're facing serious limitations in terms of resources. Buying expensive research and manufacturing equipment is off the table for now. But that doesn't mean we're out of options. We're going to pause our work on the new processors for EW stations, not scrap them, just put them on hold. From this point forward, our priority is clear. We need to prove to the Ministry of Defense that we're capable of delivering real, working systems. That means building something tangible. If we can secure a government contract, the funding from that will allow us to continue our research." I looked around the room. Everyone was listening closely, but I caught the sour expressions on the faces of the guys whose project had just been shelved. "Nadir," I said, turning to one of them, "don't take it too hard. You and Jaser did excellent work, and we will finish your processors. But right now, I need both of you focused on designing the dynamic interface circuitry for the EW stations." "Yeah, we get it, Nathan," Nadir replied, trying to keep his voice neutral. "It's just frustrating. We were right on the verge of a breakthrough, or at least a glimpse of one on the horizon. You'll have your breakthrough, don't worry. But for now, let's stay focused." I continued. "In 3 months, I want to present the Ministry of Defense with a full assault platoon equipped with our new camouflage systems. I'll try to borrow 3 drop bots, 3 Scalpel-class light combat drones, and a set of battle exosuits from the Planetary Assault Academy, along with a platoon of cadets. But everything else, we'll have to purchase with company funds. Jeff and I have sketched out a preliminary configuration for the equipment. It's still rough, and it'll be up to you to refine it. In a couple of days, I'll finish the software that ties all the hardware together into the mode we need. And even then, we'll probably need to tweak it. We've no idea yet what kind of traps are waiting down the line." Chief Engineer Jeff and Professor Stein will divide up the assignments. "I want a complete list of the required hardware and components in 2 days. And I mean only what's absolutely essential. Our resources aren't infinite, and they don't stretch easy. And yet, even trimming everything down to the bone, cutting corners that probably shouldn't be cut, we still couldn't bring the total below 53 million. I knew we needed some margin for unexpected expenses. 60 million would have been the safe target. But at that moment, we only had 30. Then, unexpectedly, the money problem started to solve itself. Late in the afternoon, Professor Stein stopped by my office. He looked thoughtful, but I could tell he hadn't just come to talk shop. "Nathan," he said without much preamble, "I've been thinking about the funding issue. It's clear. The competitor pressure got us blacklisted from most of the banks. But what if you and I don't act on behalf of the Briggs Arms Company at all? What if we go in as private citizens instead?" I raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. He continued, "Sure, the big banks won't talk to us. But there's a small one here on Titan, The Titan Credit Union. KCU. I've had an account there. For years. It services the lunar colonial tech, so I signed up with them back when I was still teaching for convenience. I stared at him, almost stunned. Ivan Gerhardt Stein, the most cautious and conservative man I knew, had just said you. And I, in the same sentence as loan application. Professor, did I hear that right? You're saying you'd co-sign a loan with me? Well, maybe not as a co-borrower, he admitted, with a dry smile. I'm not quite that brave, but I'll serve as a guarantor. I'll put up collateral. Don't forget, I own a good chunk of the patents used in our systems. And while I may be an old miser and an academic careerist, I do know who the real driving force behind this company is. He paused. His gaze was steady. But more than that, Nathan, I don't want to see this effort of yours fail. I remember the words you used when you convinced me to leave my university position and join your firm. 10 years from now, I'd like to go back to the moon and teach at the lunar colonial tech again. But for that to happen, there has to be something to return to. So yes, you can count on my share as collateral. That should give you access to an extra $30 million. Unlike with all the other banks we had dealt with, where everything happened through the network, Professor Stein and I decided to appear in person at the Titan Credit Union. The flight to Titan didn't take long. And the very next day, Ivan Gerhardt and I were sitting in the office of the branch manager. As it turned out, the professor was a long-time and highly respected client of KCU. His patent royalties landed in his account regularly, and Ivan Gerhardt, not being one to spend lightly, had built up a tidy sum. The bank was understandably pleased with such a client. After hearing us out and reviewing the documents, the manager gave a polite smile. Gentlemen, I trust you understand that the interest rate for a personal loan will be higher than if you came to me on behalf of a registered company. Of course, Mr. Kamsky, I replied, recognizing the subtle signal that he was well aware of the situation surrounding the Briggs Arms Company. At the moment, though, applying on behalf of the firm wouldn't be the wisest approach. I think you're right, Kamsky said with a nod. And I must say, you did very well to come here in person. It's doubly wise. We can speak freely now, no ears in the walls. He leaned back in his chair, his expression frank. You've piqued the interest of our board of directors, Mr. Briggs. We've been watching your efforts, how you push forward, how results follow. And yes, we look at the financial side of things. That's our job. For well-known reasons, we would not be able to issue a loan to the Briggs Arms Company directly. But you, as a private citizen of the Federation, a lunar resident, and a recipient of both the Gold Star and the Iron Cross, we are prepared to support. He tapped the tablet lightly. The patent you're offering as collateral is more than sufficient. If your endeavor should fail, though we doubt it, we could easily recoup our losses. However, by issuing such a loan, even to you, personally, we do assume certain risks. There may be reactions from those forces you're already familiar with. He paused, then continued. And so, in return for taking this step on your behalf, we'd like to ask for a favor. I'm listening, I said calmly. If your efforts succeed, if the Briggs Arms Company breaks through and earns access to government contracts, we'd like the company to move its accounts to our bank. That's all. Just a simple promise. I allowed myself a small smile. Mr. Kamsky, let me ask you this. What bank do you think I would turn to after all the others slammed the door in my face, and only one truly listened and offered to help? I don't even need to promise. I was already planning to come back here. Then we understand each other, the manager said, returning my smile. Let's move on to the formalities. Lieutenant General Schiller listened to me with a grim expression. I didn't keep anything from him. This man had helped me more than once before, and I knew he wasn't the type to stab me in the back. When I finished speaking, he leaned forward slightly, his tone stern. You're taking a big risk, Lieutenant. He said darkly. These people don't play games. Are you sure you've thought everything through? Am I taking a bigger risk than I did on Protus 3, sir? Don't play dumb with me, Briggs. These are different kinds of risks. No one's planning to kill you, at least not directly. But you've set something in motion now, and you don't have the luxury of screwing it up. I hope you understand that as well as I do. He gave me a hard look, then added, only, the people running this race don't care about your reasons. I don't know what's going through their heads, but greed has clearly blinded them. And I have a pretty good idea what their next move is going to be. If you present something worthwhile to the commission, their lobbyists will push for live combat trials before any federal contract is signed. And that means you, your team, and your new tech will get shipped off to a place you're not supposed to come back from. Are you ready for that? I figured it might come to that, I said. Then we'll go through that too. You're that sure of yourself? I am. I trust myself. I trust my people. And I trust the cadets from the Planetary Assault Academy, who I'd like to request for the duration of the government trials of my equipment. What we'll show on the proving grounds will be enough to get the commission's attention, but we won't show them everything. I'll keep a few cards up my sleeve. If we're sent into combat, no matter how bad the conditions are, I'll be ready to play them. We'll handle it. Schiller gave a slow nod, the tension in his jaw easing slightly. If it were anyone else, I wouldn't believe a word of it. But I know you, Briggs. You don't talk big unless you mean it. I'll do what I can to help you. But this will have to go through the Board of Trustees, at least the chairman. I think the Army General will back us. I had just 1 month left before classes at the academy began. Ever since I was awarded the Golden Star, I'd officially been on leave. I had already completed my officer training ahead of schedule, and the orders summoning me to the academy specified my arrival date as June 20th. The leave was well earned, and customary with the award that I spent nearly the entire month shuttling back and forth between the capital and Titan, where Jeff and 4 of our engineering students were practically living in the maintenance bay of the old training facility. General Schiller had kept his word, and even Vasnetsov turned out to be a man of his word. They gave us the least beat-up gear they could spare, which was more than I'd dared hope for. A couple of times, Schiller himself came down into the hangar. He didn't say a word, just stood there silently watching us struggle with the equipment. Then, without any explanation, he sent us a support team of 3 academy technicians the very next day. There was still an ocean of work ahead. We were planning to outfit not just the bots and scalpels, but also the assault troopers' exosuits with our new EW stations. If we were going to do this, we'd go all in. Every component of the assault squad had to meet the new stealth standards that by the end of the month, I was finally able to catch my breath. I'd come to trust that under the careful supervision of Lieutenant Jeff and Professor Gerhardt, the team would be able to finish what we'd started without my direct involvement. On June 19th, I left Titan and flew to the capital. The General Staff Academy was waiting. The gray-haired colonel who received me raised an eyebrow at my second lieutenant's insignia, clearly surprised. But when his eyes took in the qualification patch, the Golden Star, and the Iron Cross, he chose not to comment. He silently accepted my documents, cross-checked them with the roster on his tablet, then handed me the access key to my room and a set of instructions for the induction ceremony, where we would be formally presented to the Academy's commanding officer. That was it for the formalities, and I was deeply grateful for the efficiency.